Oh,
Yes.
okay. So I was explaining on this particular screen earlier. So we have got three levels of certification from Microsoft: fundamental, associate, and expert. And we are here to discuss expert level certification from Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect. And we have one more parallel certification for the engineering team or the DevOps engineers who can pursue Azure DevOps engineer course. So those are the two different expert level certification. So the Microsoft course has been numbered for their certification in such a way, like 100 series for administration, 200 for developers, and 300 for architects, 400 for DevOps, 500 for security. And if you are interested, you can also pursue 700 series, which is for network engineer. We also have other parallel track for data engineers and data scientists and so on. So those are also certain associate level certifications which you can try to appear for. So that way you get a broader understanding on what are the different products and services that Microsoft Azure offers. So there are various track. Okay, so there is no mandatory certification to start with. All the intermediate level certifications or the basic fundamental certifications are optional to start with. And if you want to get Azure Virtual Desktop, you can directly appear for the specialty certification. And if you want to get IoT developer certification, so these are all specialty certifications that are there, like AI, IoT, machine learning, Azure Virtual Desktop, and so on. So there are many specialty level certifications that are there. You can directly appear for them. But for the expert level certification, even though the fundamental is not a mandatory one, you can definitely take it to have a solid foundations. And the associate level is kind of mandatory, I would say. At least one of the associate level certification, like the developer certification or the AZ104 is a kind of mandatory one. You can either choose one of the track before you take any of the expert level certification, right? So that's how you can achieve the expert level certification. But the exam, you can go and take it directly. There is no mandatory stuff that you have to appear one of the exam from the associate and then take the expert. It is not mandatory. But if you want to get the logo or the certificate that you are an expert, you have to have at least one associate level. So the fundamental one is never expiring certification. So you won't it won't get expired. And then the other certifications like the expert and the associate specialty, you have to renew them. So for expert especially, it is valid for 1 year. And every year what you can do is there is an option in Microsoft Learn where you can go and take an online assessment. It is not a proctored one, but the main exam that you are taking for the first time is a proctored one. You have to sit for the exam, and then you have to complete through the online or through the exam centers nearby you. But the renewal examination, it's just a kind of open book exam, which you can take it for renewal. So I'll give you more details around that shortly. But for this particular Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect expert level certification, there are four different design areas where the skills will be measured from us, right? So for every Microsoft exam, 700 is the passing score out of the total maximum 1,000 that you can score on these exams. And the very first area is around the identity, governance, and monitoring and logging solution, where you will get around 25 to 30% of the questions from. Whereas the maximum question is from the infrastructure area, where the compute, networking, application related designing will be the maximum portion that you'll get questions from. And data storage, of course, both relational as well as non-relational category of storage solutions will be tested. So that will be around 20 to 25% of the questions will be coming from this area. Whereas for the backup, disaster recovery, business continuity, you will get around 15 to 20% of the questions from. So A is that 305, 305, 305 is the exam code for the particular expert level certification. And this is mainly for the people who already have a subject matter expertise on the basics of cloud as well as the hybrid solutioning. So you need to have a strong understanding on these 5 different pillars of IT, right? From your data center or from general information technology. So these are the core pillars, right? Compute, network, data, monitoring, and the security. So this is mainly for the people who are dealing with the customers' business requirements, business challenges. So where you understand what they have as a challenge and you help them with implementing the right technology with the right set of tool sets, solutions, and so on. So converting the business requirement into the technology solution is what the solutions architect are meant for. And you have to expand, maybe like some of you might come from different background like database, or maybe you might be coming from virtualization background or data center experience. But in cloud, you need to cover a wide range, like breadth and depth of what the customers can handle, right? So these are all public cloud environment where Microsoft as a service provider, they are managing the physical data center, the surveillance system, the infrastructure, the underlying components are being managed by them. And as a customer, we can utilize the products and services that they offer with control to us, where you can implement the right level of tool sets for security and whatever governance you can choose. We can choose the right tools and right products and services. And that's where you need to understand which are the tool sets that you can use for the customer business requirement, right? So from our side, like we are primarily responsible for creating the design, high level design or low level design based on the situation, and provide them with the detailed implementation guide, which will be useful for the implementation team to get it implemented. So yeah, certification wise, see, it is mainly to get more attraction from the job aspects, right? See, when you are having a kind of certification on your name, it helps to get shortlisted in the interviews or whatever on the shortlisting. But like this exam gives you a in-depth understanding of the different roles and responsibilities that you're going to perform as an Azure Solutions Architect. Either you take the exam or not, this particular curriculum is going to help you with getting a better understanding on how you can do a solutioning using Azure products and services. So you get a lot of benefits, and of course the primary benefit is to translate the customer need, the business need, and you get them implemented as a technology solution, and which is of course secure, scalable, and reliable for the customer. And there is a lot of increasing need for Azure Solutions Architect over the last 5 years, especially last 5 years, but they are into the market for the last 15 years. They started their journey way back in 2009, 2010 into Azure offering. But then in the last 5 years, there has been a considerable increase in market share over each and every quarter. And of course, like you need to have a strong fundamental background, IT background, to help customers understand what they have as a problem and then convert that into a technical or technology solutions. Of course, it is a higher job level, and you will get associated benefits when you take this Azure Solutions Architect expertise. So as I told you, these certifications have a validity of 1 year, and afterwards, like, you have to take a free online assessment through Microsoft Learn, and you can get that renewed. It is an open book exam after the first year, right? The very first year you have to go and appear for the exam through registered online centers, or through the classroom, through the physical examination centers, and you have multiple.
Stan, sorry. Can you please hide this pop-up for the team sharing? The pop-up for the team. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So overall, so this is what is going to be the agenda for the next 8 days. So we are planning to have our session split into 8 days of session. The day one today, we are going to discuss on Azure governance, and we are going to discuss how we can implement understanding a case study for a particular example customer, and then we will also have some understanding on sample questions. Of course, we need to have a better understanding of well-architected framework that Microsoft has provided, not just Microsoft, even Azure, sorry, Amazon, Google, they have their own well-architected tools through which you can go and do the assessment for the customer and get the outcome out of it. And day two will be more focusing on identity and access management. Day three will be on compute migration. Day four will be on network. Day five will be on storage and non-relational storage related services and migration on the data side. Database on day six. Day seven will be app and serverless monitoring and logging. Day eight will be business continuity, DR, and backup and so on. See, for each of the days, we will have a case study where you will get to understand what customer has as a requirement, and we need to kind of come up with a solution for each of these case study. So unlike the associate level where we need to go and do certain things, here as a solutions architect, we need to kind of understand the business requirement and we need to convert that into a technical documentation or a technical diagram. So these are the 8 different case studies that we are going to have on each of the days starting today. So governance related case study we will have, and we will have the listed case studies on each of the days. Like tomorrow we will have authentication and authorization related case study, compute, network, non-relational storage, relational database, app architecture solution. Finally, we'll have a logging and monitoring solution related case study. So this is what we have as a syllabus to discuss over the next 8 days. Any questions before we start into the day one?
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Good, and this for the team. So, so we have covered the Azure administration. That is considered as fundamental, or it's considered as the
Yeah,
uh,
associate in intermediate level.
associate, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
so if yeah, so if there's somebody complete both the certification, I think they can be officially considered as an expert, right?
Correct. That is true.
Okay, cool. Thank
Okay,
you.
so let's start here. So today we are on day one of Azure Solutions Architect expert level certification related course discussion. And we will have this agenda covered today. So we will focus on Azure governance. That is where we get to set up the proper policies, landing zone, and we will make best use of the logical and the physical hierarchy that Microsoft Azure provides us. At the end, we will also have a detailed session on how we can perform the well-architected framework review for our customer. So this is for today's agenda. And see, before we get into the first module, which is design governance module, we will need to have some understanding what we as a solutions architect, we need to develop as a skill. See, since we are going to be customer facing, it's not just the technology skills that will be enough, right? So we need to have leadership skills. We need to have a good written communication skill. Of course, we need to adapt with the different case requirements. For example, you might work with some government related projects, and sometimes you might work with some commercial customer related projects. Some at times, like they might have they come from different industry vertical, right? Where they might coming from maybe manufacturing, or they might come from healthcare, or they might come from some financial institutions. So it all depends. So we have to adopt our design and the way that we think for customers from the customer centric view, not from the same. We cannot have one solution fitting all the customer needs, right? So we have to adapt ourselves with the different customer needs. And of course, analytical thinking and interpersonal skills are very, very essential. And of course, see, even though we are not into the troubleshooting of the production environment or the operations, we are not part of the direct operations delivery. We are also governing the overall solution or overall implemented environment. So the design that we are creating is a living document, right? So there are chances that there will be a newer version of the product that we have implemented will be released in the next month or the next week. So the design has to evolve over the period. So the design documents are a living document where we have to continuously update them with the new technology or with the new services that is coming in. And that's where the technical direction, the people who are on the operations delivery will be looking forward from us, and we are completely responsible for the architecture standards, best practices, principle across the implemented environment. So we should be evaluating, analyzing what we have implemented, and we have to keep up to the market growth, or the things will evolve, technology will evolve, right? It will evolve around a lot of different products and services. So we need to be on top of it. We have to stay tuned with what are the new changes coming our way, and we have to get that implemented for our customers. So on the hard skills, like of course, organizations are looking for a DevOps framework to be implemented, so that way they don't want to have a separate development set of team and operations as a separate team. They want to have one single team managing the end-to-end software development lifecycle and operations, and they want it to be in an agile way. Earlier, we used to use a lot of ITSM tool sets like Remedy or ServiceNow, but people are now using tool sets like Jira to track the way that they are delivering a product or delivering an application for the customers, right, through agile way. And enterprise architecture, see, we are not completely involved into the solutioning of the enterprise. The enterprise can be a complete government organization, or it can be a commercial business where there will be a lot of layers. See, when you talk about enterprise architecture, there are four major layers, right? So business layer, data layer, application layer, and technology layer. So this solutions architect is more on the technology layer, even though it interfaces with the other areas like the application, the business, and of course, securities across all the layers. And the business strategy is also very, very important. So organizations will have an enterprise architect, that is a kind of higher level role, who will be overseeing all the solutioning happening at different layers. Like for a data center, they might have a separate solutions architect, and for Azure cloud, they might have a cloud architect, which is where we will be more focusing on to start with. But eventually over the period, we might also become an enterprise IT architect who will be responsible across the landscape. See, the enterprise architect is not just responsible for the IT landscape alone. So they are also looking at the complete surveillance on your data centers, or how the environmental impact from your organization is happening. So they look at real estates, assets, and a lot of different things, not just limited to IT. See, IT is a kind of a component within the enterprise. So enterprise architect, their role is more, it has to be a right balance between the customer, the organization strategy. So they will look into the organization's vision, mission, and then they will align the technology implementations aligned to what organization has as a strategy, vision, and mission, right? So the enterprise architecture will provide us the guidance that the solutions architect has to follow as a best practice or the standard and principles. And this is where our responsibilities will be more into. So as I told you, so enterprise architecture has got four major pillars, where the business, the organization will have their own strategy, they will have their own goal setup, and they will list down the list of mission that they want to accomplish, and they will also have a vision. So we need to have a good understanding of what business is trying to achieve. So we should not be just focusing on the infrastructure and the data, right? So we have to have strong understanding on how the applications are currently being utilized, what kind of qualities that, what kind of usage that the application is bringing in, how critical is that application for the customer, and we need to plan our solutioning across all the four domains. See, security is across all the four, so that's the reason it is not separately listed as an item, but security is again a separate layer when it comes to architecture solutioning. So we need to have a strong understanding across four domains. But in reality, the enterprise architect will take care of all the layers, but we will be focusing more around the infrastructure, software, and information. That is where the solution architects roles and responsibilities will be focusing more. But then the enterprise architect will also have a say in all the areas. They will also be guiding the different solutions architect, and you as a solutions architect, you will work with many different operations delivery team. So it might be data engineer or DevOps engineer or site reliability engineers or security engineer, administrator, developer. So as a solutions architect, you might not be doing hands-on stuff, but you will be supported by a set of engineers and team who might be doing the ground level development and operations delivery for you. And you as a solutions architect, you have to work closely with the business, the stakeholders. It can be a business owner, or it can be an application owner, or it can be the end customer who is translating their current requirements. And you need to understand whether the technology that you have implemented is fit for their business requirements. So that's your primary area of focus. And you have to ensure that you have aligned your implementation that is aligned to the well-architected framework and cloud adoption framework from Microsoft, and they have got it for specifically for Azure. And as a solutions architect, you need to understand, analyze what is the need from the customer side. We need to be very much, we need to have a very good understanding of the customer strategy. And of course, their vision and mission is something you need to be thorough about. And you have to start gathering the information, the requirement into a standard template. A different organization might have different way of requirements gathering, and you need to have regular workshops with the business owner, the stakeholders, and the application owners, so that you get to understand what are the different challenges that they have, what are the areas of improvement that they are looking at. See, only when you talk to them, only when you have regular conversations with them, you get to understand what as the business they are having as a challenge. And you as a solution architect, you need to translate that into the technology perspective, and you need to provide the technology solution by choosing the right tools and the right set of people to support that particular need. And you need to tell them like what kind of roles and responsibilities that a particular team will play. So it's not just the tool, right? The people also is very, very important. The skills is very essential, and you need to tell them like what kind of skills are needed for managing this environment. You as a solution architect, you are the one responsible for coming down with those set of responsibilities. And of course, we need to provide the solution document. There might be two level of documents, like high level design and low level design. And at times we might also have to create an implementation guide. If the deployment is something which is very custom developed, we have to give them with some good understanding on the implementation guide. And we need to provide the architecture diagram for each and every area that we are developing with. And of course, we need to follow certain frameworks. There are a lot of different frameworks, like TOGAF is there, Archimate is there. And if you're working for government organization, they also have their own Department of Defense Enterprise Architecture and Federal Enterprise Architecture frameworks are there. You can adopt the best practices, standards, the templates that they provide, and you can capture the information in such a way that it is aligned to the business requirement. Maybe you might already be working for a particular customer where they might already have a template for how you need to capture the requirements, the design, and the implementation. Very well, you can follow that, or you can go and adopt one of the framework that is more appropriate for your industry vertical and the customer. So you as a solution architect, you need to develop both the stakeholder management soft skills as well as the technology skills. So there are many different areas. As I said, you also need to take care of financial management. So cost optimization is one of the core area in the cloud. So cost will tend to quickly increase if you go and deploy certain products and services. You need to keep a watch on the cost governance on the cloud platform. See, on the on-premises, so there is a separate finance team, there is a separate approval process for the on-premises capex model. Here, cloud is an operational expenditure model where you as a solution architect, you need to find out ways where you can optimize the cost. You need to right size, you need to help um, uh, the operations delivery team to go and identify where exactly they can reduce the cost. Over the years, like Microsoft has got given a lot of different purchasing options, like they have given you reservations, they have given you savings plan, and there are a lot of options through which you can reduce the cost. See, initially you might not know that this particular application is going to run for a longer duration. So if you know it, like upfront, you can tell them that there are a lot of different purchasing options which you can optimize the cost. And of course, today we are going to have a detailed discussion on the governance. You will get to understand more. And when it comes to virtualization, there are a lot of new enhancements that Microsoft is coming up. Especially, they have released Windows Server 2025 in November 2024, right, where it has come up with a lot of new enhancements on the Hyper-V. And of course, those capabilities, those benefits will be reflected on Microsoft Azure Data Center, because underlying virtualization technology is Microsoft Hyper-V and System Center Virtual Machine Manager. There has been a lot of new features and functionalities that has been released along with Windows Server 2025 operating system. So definitely they will roll out those newer version of Hyper-V on the Microsoft Azure Data Center, and over the period you will also get those benefits and capabilities on the Azure environment. Of course, we need to have good understanding of how Azure Resource Manager works, and operating system knowledge is definitely needed. On the cloud, many applications are running on Linux platform, even though it is Microsoft public cloud offering. You could see a lot of Linux operating systems now running on Microsoft Azure platform, unlike 10 years back. So now a lot of customers have migrated Linux workload. Of course, Windows workloads are considerably in good quantity, like maybe 50-50 in Microsoft Azure. Whereas if you compare Amazon and other cloud providers, the Linux operating systems are more in the other platform, because you are here in Microsoft Azure, you get a lot of cost benefits, you get hybrid cloud implementation benefits when you are using Microsoft licenses on Azure platform. And there is a lot of cost reduction that you can get here. And you can also bring your own licenses. If you have any unused licenses on your premises, on your data center, you can bring them here, and you can leverage, or you can reduce a lot of cost here, and cost benefits are there. So these are the different skills that you might need to have, and collaboration with the customer stakeholder is very, very vital, and guiding your team. It can be DevOps engineers, or it can be security engineers. So you as a solutions architect, you need to help them understand what exactly is the implementation that we have done, and how they can bring in overall effectiveness the architecture that you have implemented. So regularly you have to think about improvising the processes, right? So process is something is very, very essential. So people and the products has to have a very good interlinking on the existing process. So people, process, and the product, right? They are pretty much interlinked, and that's how you can ensure high quality delivery is provided. So as a solutions architect, so these are the different responsibilities that you have. And any questions before we move on to module 1? I know, like many of you are very seasoned, and you have got a lot of experience on IT. So that way you should have some level of understanding what an architect does. So maybe if you have questions, we can spend some more minutes on that, or else we will get into the module 1. Just to confirm, my audio is clear and
Yes, loud and clear, Stan. Thank you so much. I think,
Sure, sure.
we are
Yep,
good. Thanks for that good introduction. So I
yep,
think
yep.
that gives the team to understand of, what are the, the various soft skills needed to become an architect. I think,
Yeah, very true. So generally, like people tend to focus more on the technology. So that is good at the associate level. At the implementation engineer level, we tend to have a lot of hands-on work delivered. But then when it comes to architecture, it is completely a different cap that you need to wear,
exactly.
right? So you need to have a lot of collaboration and interaction with the customer. So that's where you bring in a lot of project work, or you get a lot of demand on the roadmap. So that's how you can develop what you can deliver as an architect for the customer. So only when you talk to the business owners, the product owners, the stakeholders, you get to understand what kind of challenges they have with the current application or current infrastructure, where see, you will also get visibility over the period. So when you start working on a particular particular customer environment, you will have your own learning, and you will start to understand that there are certain legacy infrastructure or legacy applications or legacy operating systems that are there, and you can start remediating them by providing recommendation. That is something you will automatically start doing it. But when you want to do a proper effective governance, you need to have regular cadence with the stakeholders. You need to have regular connect with them, so that way you can understand how you could provide proper solutioning for them. So now the
Absolutely.
chapter 1 is more on the governance, right? So the governance in Azure, I've grouped them into 7 different areas, and you might have already heard about these terms, right? The management group, subscription, resource group, resources, and these are the logical hierarchy, or I would say these are all the management hierarchy or resource hierarchy. So this is how it is structured. So you might have already seen this in the Azure Administrator course. So management group is where we start creating the resources, and you have the management group at the top, and mostly like you will have a default root management group under which you will go and create multiple management group. If you have regional governance, like one for Americas or one for Asia Pacific, and if you have one for Europe, you will have separate management teams and management group. And see the policies, the standards, the best practices, you can apply it from the root management group, and certain things you can also inherit from the root, and some new enforcement, or if you want to apply certain best practices at the second level, you can also do it. And below that you have the enterprise agreement applied at the subscription level. This is where you create it across different business unit or different department, or for different billing requirement, you will go and create separate subscription, and you might have separate support plan. Might be some the workload might be having a development workload, then you might go for developer support plan. And if you have some enterprise application with mission critical need, you might also go for enterprise agreement plan. And based on the workload category, you might have separate support plans for the subscriptions, and you might also get a separate billing, and the charges will be available at the subscription level. Even you can go and get the extract of the billing at the resource group level, but generally the subscriptions are meant for billing boundary. So this is the logical resource hierarchy, where you create the virtual machines, the load balancers, the databases, and so on. So the resources are generally stored in the container in the folder called resource group, and these resource group are part of a particular subscription, and these subscriptions are part of management group. So this is what we call it as a resource hierarchy or management hierarchy or logical hierarchy within Azure. On the right, you have the physical hierarchy. So overall, Microsoft has got geographies. This is primarily to ensure that your data is compliant, and the data residency requirements are met. So when you store the data, there are a lot of regulatory standards that are there, right? For example, if you take Europe, European government has got the GDPR, where the data should not be copied over, or you should not keep a copy of the data outside of that regional boundary or geographical boundary within the European Union. It has to be residing, right? So the geography is primarily meant for data residency, sovereignty, and compliance requirement, whereas the regions are created to provide the closest experience of the Azure data center for each and every region. So you have got multiple regions globally available. More than 60 regions are there, and you've got more than 150 data centers that forms the Microsoft Azure offering. So availability zone is a physical data center. You might have more than 2 or 3 data center in each and every region, and within that availability zone, the physical data center, right? Within that physical data center, you have the availability set, which is nothing but your rack, physical rack in your data center. So each and every rack is nothing but an availability set. And there are also concepts called logical concepts like placement group, which you can have like affinity, anti-affinity in VMware virtualization, right? You can go and place your VMs closer to each other, or you can separate them to get a high availability. They also provide you content delivery network like CDN options are there. You can utilize them to enhance the performance, latency, and so on. So from the physical hierarchy, so it starts with geographies, regions, availability zone, availability set, and your resources will be stored within that. So this is how Microsoft Azure has organized physically and logically. So we are going to understand each and every component listed here. Management group, subscription, resource group, and we will also understand Azure policy. We have had a demo on how to create Azure policy and restrict what kind of resources during our Azure administrator. And we also discussed about how to create users and give them permissions through role-based access control. So that is also something which we need to take care of, or we need to have a strong understanding on tagging and naming conventions. I've also shared some template during my Azure Administrator course on how you can tag your resources and how you can name your resources. Finally, we will also have a discussion around the Azure landing zone, where we'll understand how the landing zone can speed up the deployment. See, when it comes to governance, see, governance is a interesting term, right? So it can refer to a lot of different things. So I will also use some notes here, so that way you can refer it later. So when it comes to governance, so it refers to enforcing certain level of standards. Of course, that is the primary thing, and you want to have common standard across different organization structures. See, for example, I will tell you the challenge that we might see. If you have different regional teams, right? Like one IT team for Europe, one IT team from Americas, and another IT team for Asia Pacific. Each and every team will have their own option to go and choose the products and services. Let's say they will choose Microsoft SQL for their application databases, and then someone in Americas will choose Oracle, and someone will choose the other IBM database like DB2 or whatever. See, over the period, the technology, the tooling, the complexity will increase. And when you want to centralize the IT team, or when you want to offshore the IT team, there will be a lot of challenges, because you have a wide range of databases, wide range of operating systems, wide flavors of technologies and tools that you need to manage. So from the governance aspect, overall, you need to have a mechanism where you can enforce what kind of standards, what kind of best practices that everyone has to follow. So if they choose a particular product, it has to be Oracle across the globe. It has to be Microsoft SQL across the globe. So you need to enforce certain best practices, standards, and of course, you need to have very good processes across the board. That way, you know that people are following the right the tooling. Okay, so even when it comes to the governance, you need to have the proper set of policies applied. Okay, and then finally the permissions. So I would say there are many other elements, like how you name it is also very essential. So the naming, the tagging, especially on the cloud, tagging plays a very important aspect when you want to search something, or when you want to index something, or when you want to apply to a subset of resources. So tagging is the way that you can go and enforce certain policies or rules, or if you want to apply some permissions. So tagging is the way that you can get a good governance strategy. So these are the different areas that we are talking about. When we say governance, we want to have a proper practice to apply the rules, policies, the permissions, and you have a good control on the infrastructure, application, and the resources. So at the end, we are going to have this. Overall, like, we are doing all these things to have a very secure environment. And of course, each and every industry vertical might have their own compliance uh, requirement. Like healthcare might have HIPAA standards, and financial institutions might need to have the PCI standards, and different government bodies might need to follow certain government standards, or there might be some global standards like ISO or SOC compliance, which you need to adhere with. So if you have a proper governance mechanism, you can go and implement any governance strategy that can fulfill the security requirement, or even if the infosec team has their own information security related standards that needs to be enforced, you can easily do it. And even if you want to have certain encryption standards across the workload, and if you want to have some corporate standards that you need to enforce, you can definitely do it. So governance is most beneficial when you have a proper structure, right? So the structure is what I am going to help you develop for even if we are going to have a proper use case and case study on how you can structureize the customer environment and how you can apply the standard, right? So I will come to that shortly, but now starting with, like, we need to understand how you can design each of these things. The very first one on the list is the management group, right? See, the management group is mainly needed when you have more than I would say 5 or 10 subscriptions, right? So for if you have only 1 or 2 subscription, then you can just handle it with maybe like one management group, which is the default root management group. But if you have multiple subscriptions in your organization, that is when you might need to create a lot of different management group, so that way your governance can determine the initiatives, the requirements, and you can effectively apply it. See, some organization, they might have separate set of workload which might need to be PCI compliant, some workload might be SOC compliant, and there might be some different governance strategy that is needed. Like it can be a compliance strategy, or it can be applying the policies, or it can be applying certain things, but it all starts with the management group. So management group is where your implementation will start with. I'll capture few points here. There are also a lot of other points that I have on the slide. I
And
will come.
question
Yeah,
on
yeah, go ahead.
the subscription part. So you said if we
Mm-hmm.
have a less subscription, we can opt
Mm-hmm.
for a one management group or few. But subscription is something is changeable, right? We can change it. It's not going to add any additional cost or
Okay.
anything.
Yeah, subscription you can have, you can create as many subscription that you want, but see, when it comes to consolidated billing report or consolidated governance, then it adds complexity, but it is not going to add any separate cost just for the subscription. You can create as many subscription as you need. For example, if you are having 5 different environment, like production, development, UAT, maybe SIT, and so on, you can have a separate subscription for each of them. And see, it all depends on how big is your environment. If your organization is very small, creating more subscriptions will might bring in more complexity at the time of governance reporting, or like when you want to generate a bill, you might have to consolidate 5 different bill, and then you have to look at each department within that, and then there will be a lot of work for the IT team or the billing team at the later
Understand.
time. But
So
yeah, yeah,
when you say we need to consolidate, it means every subscription will have its own
bill,
bill,
yeah,
and then we have to
correct.
combine it manually.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, that's where the challenge will be. So you'll get a separate bill for each and every subscription. And see, there are mechanisms which provides you consolidation. Like, for example, customers are using third-party tools like Cloud Bolt or Cloud Checker, or there are many different tools. Okay, even
Mm-hmm.
PM has got Cloud Ability. So those can do that automation for you by looking at the tag. It can tell you, like, based on that particular department tag, it will tell you like what are the billing, or what are the usage across all the different subscriptions. So there are ways that you can do it, but if you are going with the native method, if you are just pulling the report and doing your own consolidation without using a third party tool, then yeah, of course you need to do some manual work while cross charging, or while trying to understand how the utilization is across many subscriptions.
Understood. Yeah, understood.
So yeah, this is mainly subscription is mainly a billing boundary. Okay, so it is not just a billing boundary. So it can also act as a resource boundary. As I told you, you can have subscriptions created for different departments or different environment or different BUs and whatever, right? So you can have separate subscription based on the organization structure, or it can be mainly for the billing boundary, and even it can act as a management boundary. For example, if you have regional teams, or if you have a country specific team, maybe like UK has a separate IT team, and France as a separate IT team and US as a separate IT team, you can also go and create separate subscription based on how they manage the current IT landscape. So that is also something which is feasible. So this is mainly acting as a logical container. The subscription is mainly a logical grouping. I mean, container, don't get confused with the containerization concept, but this is just a folder, I would say. This is a way how you can create and logically structure them. And this is mainly a unit of management and how you can scale your environment. If you want to add more resources and stuff, then you can have subscriptions created for the workload. But I'll come to the subscriptions in detail. So we have a lot of different areas to cover and discuss. But for now, at the very high level, governance is providing us a mechanism, and it helps us to maintain control over the infrastructure and resources by having a centralized best practice, standards, policies, and stuff. And the very first one, the management group, it is mainly to have if you have more number of subscriptions and if you want to consolidate them, when you want to apply certain policies and compliance and permission, you will go and create them. So it's you will have a default root management group. Okay, so that is something which is default. Okay, and you don't have to if you want to change it as a tenant root management group, let's say customer X. Okay, so customer A is the customer name. You can also go and rename it. Okay, so everything could be renamed. The management group, the resource group, these stuffs could be renamed. You can also call this as customer A root management group. And within that, if you want to create certain additional management groups to group a set of subscriptions, you can also go and create them. So management group is mainly to manage the policies, the compliance settings, the standards,
I
and
have a
then
question. Sorry, I
yeah,
have a
go ahead, go
question.
ahead.
So in a scenario where I have one management group and multiple subscription
Mm-hmm,
versus a scenario I create two management groups with each subscription. So what would
mm-hmm.
be a difference in
Okay,
picking?
so yeah. So you have option to go and apply different compliance standard on each of the management groups. So let's say I want to apply an initiative like HIPAA for one of the management group, and you might have got different sub companies, part of acquisitions or mergers, or see different industry verticals. See, Amazon as a company, they are A to Z, right? So they might not have the single standard across different sub organization. They might have acquisition the food chain company, they might have acquisition the financial institution, so they might have to apply different policies at the sub management group level. So if that is the case, you can use the different management group to enforce certain compliance standards or best practices and stuff that is appropriate for that particular sub company or business unit. See, different business unit within the same organization, they might also want to have separate set of policies. Maybe HR department might want to have
So
separate.
basically,
Yeah,
this acts as for us as a policy enforcement point.
correct. It is a management enforcement point where you can apply policies, permissions, compliance standards, and so on.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so
Whereas
subscription. Yeah,
subscription is mostly on the billing side.
no, I missed that. I could not capture what you said.
Sorry, the subscription is mostly on the billing and the resource grouping, but the
Correct,
management
correct. True,
group
true, true,
is
true. Yeah, yeah.
to the
Subscription is more on the billing, resource grouping, and yeah. You see, all of these are management hierarchy. So, for example, you can do certain things, what you can do at the subscription level and the management group level, but it makes sense when the organization is larger and you have a lot of different things to manage, then it's better to create different management groups to have better way of handling it. See, certain things you can do it at the subscription level, resource group level, and management group level. Let's say permissions, right? Permissions can be applied directly on the resource. You can do it on the resource group. So you might have to have a logical thinking on how it can be more efficient, on what level if you do it, it will be better for that organization. So it all depends on how the scale of the organization. If they are very large and wide, then you might have to think about applying it at a little lower level. But if it is very small, you can just control them at a little higher level. So see, you might have to fit your solution based on the organization scale. Okay, you cannot have the same solution applied for different organization. In some cases, certain architects will just have one route MG, and they might create multiple subscription directly. And in some situations, they might go with additional management groups. See, these are all not mandatory. And even Microsoft has
Yeah.
restricted us by creating the number of levels that you can create. See, excluding the root management group, you can go up to only 7 layers. Okay, 7 levels. Okay, so MG1, sub MG1, and then child MG1, and so on. So you can have only 7 levels of depth. And Microsoft don't want us to create more because it will create more confusion. So there are many organizations who has went up to 5th level and 6th level of management group. So there are many enterprise organizations, Fortune 100 companies, where they have done a lot of acquisitions, mergers, and stuff, where you might have to have separate classifications. Some might have insurance as a separate vertical, and see you might get to work with different enterprise organizations, and you might understand it might make sense for a particular company, which might not be a requirement for another company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clear.
So let me just move on. See, when you go and create an account, see, Microsoft provides you a lot of different commercial cloud offering, right? So they have got Microsoft 365, which is Office 365 earlier, right? And they have got Microsoft Entra, which is their identity and access management entry point. Earlier, it used to be called as Azure Active Directory. And they have got Microsoft Dynamics, Microsoft Intune. There are many different products part of your Microsoft 365. And Microsoft Azure is their public cloud offering, where they provide you different services into infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and function as a service, and so on, right? So when you go and create an account with Microsoft, it gets created as a separate tenant on Microsoft Entra ID, previously called as Azure Active Directory. And you might also have multiple tenants within the same enterprise. As I told you, if you have some mergers and acquisitions, they want to have as a separate tenant. So that way, if they want to spin off at a later time, or if they want to sell that organization later, they can just move them easily. If they just bring it to the same tenant, then splitting them and moving it away from the Microsoft Entra or at the Azure level will be complicated. So they generally tend to have easier options to spin off or sell a certain entity, right? So that's how you might have multiple uh, tenants for the same organization. And see, Microsoft Entra is mainly for a global customer. See, that is the largest identity and access management currently in existence, right? So Microsoft Entra is the multi-tenant identity and access management for all the customers. So whenever we go and when a particular customer go and opt for any commercial cloud offering, it can be Azure or Microsoft 365, we get an account created on Microsoft Entra. So Entra is the entry point to Microsoft Commercial Cloud. Earlier, they had maybe the name was not appropriate because they had it as Azure Active Directory, right? See, the Active Directory solution was not just for Azure. Okay, it was used for Microsoft 365, Dynamics, Intune, and other services. So it did not make sense for them to call it as Azure Active Directory anymore. And they want to have a new branding name. That's why they changed it to Microsoft Entra, which is the entry point into Microsoft Commercial Cloud. So any customer who want to opt for any commercial services on the Microsoft public cloud platform, they need to create an account in Entra ID, and after which they can go and create whatever level of resource hierarchy for their organization requirement. That's where the management group, subscription, resource group, and the resources comes into play. Okay, so subscription are the logical container mainly for the billing boundary and the resource boundary. And you might also, some people might also use it for maybe a permission boundary, and it can also act as a of course it is primarily the management boundary, right? So that's what we were talking about earlier. So subscription is mainly a billing boundary, resource boundary, and management boundary. And some people will use it as a place to handle the permissions and policies as well. And it can also act as a security boundary. If you want to apply some security compliance or standard, you can also do that here. So generally, subscriptions depends on case to case. Each organization creates them for each department, each business unit, or based on each environment, they will go and create it. And the next level is the resource group level. This is where you group the resources which share the common life cycle. So this is nothing but collection of resources. Resources are nothing but your virtual machines, storages, virtual machines, load balancers, anything that you can create as a separate entity in um, Azure platform, they are called as resource, right? Any object that you could create and manage as a separate item in Azure is called as a resource. It can be a VM, load balancer, it can be Azure function, or it can be any different service. And you group them into a resource group. For example, one application might have different layers, like it might have web layer, or it might have a middleware layer, it might have an app layer, it might have a data layer, and it might also have a database kind of. So you might have to bring all those resources together into a resource group. So that way, when you create them, it gets created together. And if you delete the resource group, automatically all the resources will get deleted and at the same time. So they will come, I mean, the resources which need to share the same similar life cycle, you can have it together into the resource group. And these are all place where you want to store the related resources to each other. For example, you might have a load balancer and you might have multiple servers, and you might have some backend storage. You might have some caching solutions. So all these are related items, right? You can bring all of them together into the same resource group. So since they are related to each other, when you just clean up things, you might not leave any stale things. For example, in your on-premises, so in VMware environment, that is the challenge, right? So you might go and delete the virtual machine, but you might not delete the disks associated with them. You might have sprawling happening there. So in cloud, to avoid such sprawling, you might, the resource groups could be efficiently used. So that way it is more of a folder structure. Okay, so where you can apply some quotas, where you can apply some restrictions, where you can apply some permissions. So you can also use this area to restrict certain resources to be created. You can apply some restrictions. You can apply the permissions here. And at this level also, see, not just at the resource group level, even at the subscription level and the management group level, you can also go and apply certain resource lock. So that way the accidental deletion could be avoided, right? And then accidental modification could be avoided using this resource lock. And there are ways where you need to properly apply the resource tagging. I will come to the resource tagging shortly. Okay, I've shown the demo for a resource lock during our administration course. It is mainly just to go and apply the lock, so that way accidental modifications and deletions could be avoided. Any question? Is my audio okay still? I heard some noise.
Yeah,
You are good. You are good, Stan. No worries. If we
Okay.
feel anything wrong, we will interrupt you. Go ahead.
Sure,
I'm
sure,
listening.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on here. So there is a higher layer called Microsoft Entra ID, and that is common across different tenants. Okay, so Microsoft Entra is a centralized identity and access management solution where billions of identities are getting created for each and every tenant. Tenant is a customer for Microsoft. Okay, and here, as I told you, when you plan for the management group, you need to try and keep it reasonably flat, and you can just handle the entire environment with just root MG. Or if you want to have departmental structures like one for sales, corporate, IT, and so on, you can create a sub management group. Or else, if you want to rename the root management groups as, for example, Tailwinds root management group, that is very much possible. You can go and rename them, and you can have your own identities created, like the numbers could be modified. And for everything that you create in Azure, it gets a resource ID allocated from the Azure resource provider. Okay, so the Azure resource provider, assigns a unique resource ID through which it does all the permissions handling or the policy handling. It does it through the resource ID, and the name is just for the customers to go and understand how these things are getting created and stuff. So consider a geographical structure when you go and create a management group. If your teams are geographically managing and separate from one another, you can also go and have a separate management group. And you can also limit the specific regions and stuff through this management group. See, for example, when you are going and creating management group, there are a lot of customers where they want to apply some restrictions. The admins has to create, the DevOps engineer has to create the resources only on a specific geographical location. So if you want to allow only Europe or UK, you can also restrict through this particular management group. And you can also assign role assignments, policy assignment, aggregate the policy. Microsoft has got a beautiful tool called Azure Policy. We have discussed it during the administrator class. So where the set of policies are grouped into a collection called initiative. So initiative is mainly corresponding to the standards like ISO, HIPAA, PCI, and so on. I will show you on the, I'll log in and show you how it looks like. But as I told you, when you create the management group, this is the icon for management group. Okay, you should not go beyond, or it will not allow you to go beyond 6 levels of depth. And it excludes the root management group. Okay, so if you include the root management group, it is 7 levels of depth. That is the levels you can create. But you can create up to 10,000 management group for your organization. But I'm talking about the layers here. So level 1, level 2, level 3, and then level 4, level 5, and you can go up to level 7. That is the maximum, including the root management group. That is the restriction you have. But you can create 10,000 management group in the parallel way. Okay, and this is where you go and apply the policies and permissions. When your organization wants a lot of flexibility, then you can go and create multiple levels of management group, and consider having a top level management group with your organization name, where you can have complete governance. And if you want to have geographical structure, and if you want to have a separate production management group, you can also have it. And of course, you need to separate the sandbox environment, the test environment, from the production. You need to have a separate management group. It will be very helpful for you to try and do some proof of concept, because that is the environment where you can try and apply certain things before you move on to the development and production environment, right? So sandbox management group, if you have it as a separate thing, then you can experiment everything starting at the management group layer. So it is always good to have a separate management group for your testing environment, the sandbox environment. That helps you to provide isolation. Whatever the experiment that you do will not impact your main environment. Okay, so sensitive information also has to be kept as a separate management group. If you have a very mission critical data or application, then of course you need to try and keep them into a separate management group. So that way it will be isolated. So next thing is the subscription layer. Subscription layer is mainly aligned for the billing and cost reporting aspect primarily. Whenever a department or a business unit want to have a separate billing, you will have a separate subscription created for it. And of course, you can also create subscription for having separate resources, which are like, for example, you want to have a separate SAP subscription, IoT subscription, or if you have some specialized environment like virtual desktops for your what do you call, for your workplace services, you can also have a separate subscription for them. You might also have a development environment where Microsoft is providing you Azure Dev Test subscription. You can also go and create a separate subscription for your specialized workload. And if you want to have a centralized or decentralized administration, you can also go and create them into separate subscription. So that way you can have better management. See, there are certain services which are shared across different departments. Like, for example, you might have a on-premises network connectivity through for that is needed for all your departments. You need not go and create separate network and separate resources for that in each and every subscription. Instead, you can have a shared services or shared resources subscription, where you can have the common firewall rules, the network, and the identities, or certain things you can keep it as a common one. So there are certain shared services like jump servers, or you might also have certain common things that you need to manage your environment. You can keep them in a separate subscription called shared services subscription, through which you can use it as a bastion or jump host or terminal server to manage the other environment. So I will show you how you can have a better structure. Even Microsoft has got a default landing zone that will help you to implement certain common standards like logging subscription, shared services subscription, network subscription, and so on, which could be easily deployed using the landing zone accelerator. So now coming to the example of subscription. So you go and create subscriptions per business unit or per department. You might also create it for each and every application at times. It is not a standard thing. As I told you, one size doesn't fit all the requirement here. So you can go and create per BU or per application, and you can help them track it. So even you have an option to track the cost at the resource group level, but in general, as a practice, many organization has been tracking the cost at the subscription level, and that's how they differentiate each and every environment and each and every organization structure. So the subscription is pretty much aligned to the organizational structure. Each organization might operate in a different way. Then you can try and get them organized, aligned to their business structure. So I'll help you with that case study a little later. And you can also apply certain policy initiatives at the subscription level. So here you can go and apply the PCI compliance initiative through Azure policy, and you can apply certain ISO standard for your shared services. You can apply, if your application need to be compliant with SOC standard, you can go and apply the SOC initiative there. And it all depends on how logically how your business is structured, right? So this is how this is one more example. You can go and have your subscriptions created for each of your environment. See, it can be as simple as that, okay? But the earlier examples might have had a lot of levels and depth. But if your organization is pretty small in nature, or if it is medium in size, you need not go and complicate it with too many different things, okay? But if it is really needed to generate a separate bill, a separate team to manage them, then you can go and create separate subscription. So that way it is properly organized. Coming to the resource group is the next level in your logical management hierarchy, right? So where you go and group the resources. See, at times you might group the resources per application. Sometimes you might have a separate database team, separate network team, separate virtual machine management team. In such case, there are slightly little complications around how you manage the permissions and policies, right? So, so if you want to have resource group for each and every layer, like data layer, app layer, and web layer, and so on, you can also do that. Or else, if you want to create one resource group for one application, I mean, it all depends on how it makes sense to you and the business owner. So you need to definitely discuss this with the application owner, business owner, and then try to understand their perspective. You can give them option one, option two, so that way they will also tell what are the pros and cons, and it will help you to decide. See, as a solution architect, you can come up with the best possible option by discussing or by having a good level of collaboration discussion with the stakeholders. Now, resource group is a container where you go and create the actual resources. So you can group it by the type of the resources, like the databases, or you can group it by application separately, or you can have separate department isolated by resource group. You can have by location, or if you want to have separate billing, also you can do it. But in general, mostly the billing is handled at the subscription level. Microsoft have recently allowed us to take the bill at the resource group level, but it's primarily the subscription that acts as a um, billing boundary. And you can also apply policies and permissions at the resource group level. You can also apply resource lock to avoid any accidental deletions and stuff. See, resource group, it cannot be renamed after the resources are created, whereas the subscription and the management group, it is pretty much only for ourselves to understand how it is structured. So you can pretty much rename some of those elements, but resource group, it's like you cannot rename it after it is created. And again, it is all one-to-one mapping. So if you go and create a particular resource, it has to be under the particular resource group, and it will be part of one subscription. These are all one-to-one mapping. You cannot have one subscription part of two management group, or you cannot have one resource group part of two subscription. That cannot be that is not realistic. You need to have one. It will be one-to-one mapping at each and every layer. And coming to the resource group, so these are the different grouping that I've seen in different customer environment. Some of them might group it by the resource type. and some of them might group it by the application type. See, they might have done it because of it might have made sense for that particular organization. So you can choose one of them which is more appropriate. Many organizations, they go and create it by application, by department, by region, by cost center, and there are many different ways that the architects design it. Okay, and at the end, it should be a well discussed and well thought application, how you have created it. And you can also consider the life cycle of the resources, so that way you can group them together. So when you deploy, update, delete certain resources together, you can also put them together into the common resource group. That is also a good strategy. And if you want to have a kind of reduced administration overhead, you can also try and manage it in a decentralized way or a centralized way. It all depends on how you want to do it. And if you want to apply certain compliance requirement at the resource group level, that is also possible. So that's why I said at the beginning of the session, you can do certain things at each of these level. You can do it at the management group level, subscription level, and resource group level, but it will be efficient based on the organization scale. Okay, some organization, it might be good to do it at the subscription level. For some of them, it might be good to do it at the resource group level, but you can do certain things at each of these level. So coming to the important area, which is tagging. Tagging is very, very essential, and it has to be aligned to both business as well as for the IT teams to have a efficient way of managing it. And when it comes to tag, you can have up to 50 tags for each and every resource. That is the metadata, right? So that is how you can go and search the resources. You can go and filter the resources. You can go and segregate the resources. You can easily isolate them. So it is going to act as a very important criteria. So tagging is a very important strategy. As a solution architect, you need to have a proper workshop with the stakeholders, with the business owners and application owners. So that way you try to capture as many number of tags for each and every resource. That way it will be easy to deal with billing or cross charging, because it is going to capture all the details like cost center, the business unit. So I've kept some samples here. So these are all the top 10-15 tags that we could see across different environments. So cost center is something which is mandatory. So that way, even though it is for the same customer, there are certain resources which will be cross charged to different department or sub companies and so on. So you need to have a cost center, and these are all the names are case sensitive. Okay, so we have to, if you are just giving cost center and in another tag, if you are having the two words together, then these are all considered as two different tags. So you need to be careful. So you need to have a proper tagging mechanism applied from the management group level. So that way, certain tags can be easily inherited, and certain tags could be applied to a specific area. And see, application names should have to be tagged. You need to have a proper approver for each and every resource. So that way, if you are making some changes or doing some maintenance, you can reach out to the right stakeholder, and maybe the business unit, cost center. If application needs disaster recovery and business continuity, you can go and tag them how critical it is to the business. You can have certain example values like this. So there are certain tags which are recommended and which are kind of optional. So from my experience, I've listed down, these are all the top 10, 15 tagging tags that you can apply. So you can also call out the compliance need for a particular application or a particular resource, the service class that it belongs to, and then I also have some more grouping here. So you can group the tags by functional, non-functional, and you can group it by the accounting, the department, the region. You can also group it by the partnership. You might have run some applications for consumers, like it might be for business to business or business to consumer, right? And also you can align it with the business purpose. What kind of impact, what kind of revenue impact you have. So based on that, you can go and uh, design the tagging. So these are all some guidelines. Okay, you might come up with different tags and types based on your organization requirement, but overall it will be aligned to these 5 different areas. So tagging is very, very important. So that way you can have a easier way to search any resources or tag any resources or group any resources. Your organization's taxonomy has to be considered, and you have to understand and then apply the tags in such a way that it will be helpful for the support team in the future. Yeah, so these are all the different levels and areas. Any questions so far up to this? I'm moving on to the next topic, Azure policy. Okay, so Azure policy is something which helps us to control, which helps us to enable and assign, manage certain policies. This is mainly for auditing and control of your resources. And Microsoft has given you a very beautiful thing called initiative. Initiative is nothing but a group of policies. I will also quickly show you on the console. We have seen it in the past, but I will quickly try to log in and show you how the policies look like. Just give me a second. Okay, let this load. Yep. See, this is how the portal looks like, right? And within the portal, you have the management groups. And within the management group, you can go and create whatever you need. And this is the root management group that I was talking about. And if you want to go and get that changed, or if you want to have something moved, you have the option to easily move them. See, for example, currently I have this subscription here. If I want to move them, you can just move it to a separate management group or a different tenant. That is also possible. And Microsoft has given you beautiful tools to move your resources across different subscriptions and different resource groups and different region. So this centralized tool can help you to move the resources if your organization is splitting into different sub companies, and if you want to move certain resources to different subscription or resource group or region, it is also easily it can be done using the resource mover. And you can create as many management group as you want. Up to 10,000 is the limit, and you can create it with and up to 7 level of depth. This is the first level, this is the second level, this is the third level, and you can go and create it up to 7 layers excluding the root management group. And you can also go and add any existing subscription or new subscription to each of these management group here. You can also go and get them created separately as a subscription here. You can go and purchase a separate pay-as-you-go subscription, or you can go for a dev test pricing subscription. There are many different subscription option. Maybe if you are having some educational institution, you can also go and purchase some student offer subscription. So there are many different options, but mainly we will go for the pay-as-you-go enterprise agreement category for creating the subscription. Now, once after you have created this management group subscription, and if you have created some resource groups here, you will also be able to see that. See, this is where you get to understand how you are spending at the subscription level. You can also generate the invoice at the subscription level, and you have the option to go and restrict what you should allow to create and what you should not allow to create. For example, if you have this option called resource provider, so this is where you restrict what as an organization you can go and register and create. For example, here you have category called network, compute, storage. So you can go and allow them to create network resources and storage resources and so on through the resource provider. But what if you want to restrict at a particular resource group level, sorry, management group level and resource group level? So that is where the policy comes into play. So with policy, there are two different things. You can go and apply individual policies to your organization, or else you can also go and apply the initiative. There are two different categories. See, policy definition is where how you restrict it. For example, if you want to restrict Azure instance type, like only memory optimized or storage optimized resources has to be created, you can also restrict it here. Or else if you want to create a storage account which is locally redundant or geo redundant, you can also enforce and restrict certain things. But initiative is where it helps you to assign initiatives at the organization requirement level. For example, you have certain grouping. Let me show you that. So here you have the initiatives. So this is like, let me go back one step. So you can see that there are a lot of initiatives. I will filter it by the definitions. I want to only list the initiatives here. So if you look at here, it will list down only the PCI, the FedRAMP, and then you have many different things like NIST standards for your US government related stuff, and PCI DSS. So these are all initiatives which has got built-in policies. Like for example, this PCI standard has got 275 policies with that initiative. You don't have to go and apply each and every policy separately. Instead, you can go and assign this initiative to a particular management group or a particular subscription, or you can also apply it to a particular resource group. You have option to do it at every level. So you have option to choose the management group, you have option to choose the subscription, you can also choose the resource group also. So you can apply it at each and every level, and if you want to exclude specific resource group or specific subscription by choosing a higher level resource, that exclusion also is available here. So you have pre-created initiatives, which is a kind of group of policies. Like for example, NIST has got 720 policies as part of it. You can just go and assign them to a particular layer or a particular level. So that way you can control it. For example, if you want to have Center for Internet Security, so CIS benchmark standards has to be applied, you can go and select it and assign it. Or else if you want to create your own policy definition, we have seen this demo in Azure Administrator class. You can kind of refer to that if you're interested. So there are many different policies and initiatives that are available. So these are all initiatives that I have filtered here. You can go and filter only the policies. So that way it is all individual policies which you can apply one by one. So there are many built-in ones, and there are many that I have created on my own, and there are certain things which are aligned to specific initiative. So Azure policy is a very powerful tool. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the initiatives are more than one policies put
Correct.
together
Yeah.
to meet a standard, is it?
Correct. Even you can create your own initiative based on your organization requirements. See, you can go and pick one of the CAS compliance, and you need not be 100% CAS compliant, right? You can be 85% or 90% CAS compliance. You can go and remove certain policies out of that, and then you can create your own initiative also. Yeah, initiative is a group of policies which can be applied together for any level.
Okay, so I have a question. So these initiatives, I think we have seen some common initiatives. I think those are most probably, done by Microsoft itself, right?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they are getting updated as well, as they, for
Yeah, yeah.
example, the CAS, etc. So,
Mhm.
um, is this when those changes are happening, will it apply automatically on to our, for example, if it's on our management group, if I apply on our management group, this initiative changes will immediately get affected, or do we have an option to say that okay, now there are some changes which would reflect, and then we can apply it?
Okay,
How does
so
it fit
there
together?
are different version control that they have. See, currently
Mm.
you might have applied 1.0.1. Maybe
Okay.
Microsoft is coming up with 1.0.2, which is very minor changes in nature. But if they are coming up with very huge change, which is like at a major level change, they will release 2.0. So you have to check those things. You have to apply it on your development test environment. Then you have to apply it on your production environment. So it is not that it will automatically go and inherit. So even though these are all initiatives that will be automatically listed here, it doesn't mean that it will be applied to your environment. Only you have to go and apply the latest version and upgrade them. So
Got
they
it.
have a version control practice.
Okay. Clear.
Yeah. So see, Azure policy is a policy as a service, right? Even though it is policy as a service, customers still have granular control on what they want to assign, what they want to exclude. So it is mainly to create, assign, and manage policies, mainly for control and auditing purpose of your resources. And it can be inherited down the hierarchy. So if you want to apply something on the management group, and you can inherit down to the resource level, and if you want to apply it specifically on a resource group, and you can also inherit, like it's like a file folder permission kind of thing, you can do it. But for tagging, it will not work that way. Okay, so tagging will not get inherited, but policies and permissions will get inherited. Okay, so these two are two different things. People get confused. So tag is something which you have to apply separately at each and every layer, but policies, permissions are something which could be inherited across the organizational levels and organizational hierarchy. If you are applying something and if you want to exclude at a particular level, that also can be done. And Azure policy is not just a service to apply certain things. You can also manage and get report also. It will tell you like what are the different non-compliance resources in your organization, and you can go and fix them. So you can also get the remediation compliance report, and it will tell you like which resources are compliant and which ones are not compliant, and you can go and do the remediations here. So it also helps you to it gives you the step-by-step instructions on what you can do in order to remediate those recommendations. So it's a powerful tool. Definitely, this is very good, useful tool when it comes to governance as a solutions architect. So now coming to the list of areas. So there are many different things that you can do. There are hundreds and hundreds of policies, and even specific initiatives have got 500, 600 different policies that are there. And you can pretty much assign it at each and every level. Let me just try to do some policy assignment and try to look at the compliance, try to evaluate it, and then see like how it is getting inherited, and also try to see how you can apply, deny, exclude certain things, and how it is getting logged. All those things could be verified. So let me take a time check here. So we are at 6 o'clock, but I think I've got a small topic or back. Let's see. I've got few slides here. Okay, so maybe let's do one thing. Should we take a short 10 minutes break and then continue here? Maybe I'll give a longer break after completing the management before the well-architected review. We will take a larger break, longer break. But for now, can we take a short 10-minute break, or we will continue and complete this portion?
Breaks are always good, so
Okay, sure. So yeah, let's
yeah,
take a short 10 minutes break and then we'll come back.
sure. Thank you.